And hello, welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I am Daren Jaime. Today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough in New York City. Coming up, we'll learn about a film that's showcasing how empowering women and adopting progressive policies could lead us towards a more sustainable future. And after that, we sit with the lawmaker introducing a bill that's reshaping the future of New York's consumer-directed personal assistance program. Next, we'll talk about the challenges of older people who are living with HIV or AIDS and what we can do to better support their health. And finally, we'll discuss an organization dedicating itself to leading Latina survivors of domestic violence to safety, as well as empowerment and long-term independence. So stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. And hello, everyone. I am Daren Jaime, and you're now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. We also want to welcome our viewers to the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast simultaneously on MNN's channels. You can stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Some things have been going on throughout the course of the past week. We'll take you through some of it with our Bronx updates. And we kick off our updates with housing news. While celebrating their 15-year anniversary, Montefiore's Housing at Risk program held a fair for Bronxites to get a better glance at what housing opportunities and resources are available to them. Our BronxNet reporter, Brittany Schuyler, has a story.
While celebrating their 15-year anniversary, Montefiore's Housing at Risk program held their first ever fair for Bronxites to get a glance at what housing opportunities and resources are available to them.
People they know or patients that they're working with feel like that they are either having inadequate housing or unstable housing. This is the place to be today.
Aside from the fair, the Housing at Risk program had made massive strides in its near 2-decade run. Outcomes include a decrease in ED visits among the unstably housed by 45%, preventing almost 40 evictions and decreasing hospital inpatient visits by 60%, and securing permitted housing for 65 individuals.
It's just so fulfilling to be able to help a patient who comes here not just for health issues, but also with some of the social determinants of health that affect their health outcomes.
Montefiore's Housing at Risk program aims to remove the stigma associated with homelessness and unstable housing in order to not just change the statistics, but change the trajectory of people's lives. They urge struggling community members to reach out with specific issues they may be facing.
If you are a Montefiore patient, you in need of housing resource services, assistance, whether it's fighting an eviction, fighting living in inaccessible housing, or any other needs like food insecurity, reach out to us here at Montefiore Medical Center.
Reporting for BronxNet, Brittany Schuyler.
And thank you, Brittany. In other news, the Bronx Toastmasters Club in Riverdale marked its 25th anniversary with a vibrant celebration featuring some engaging speech exercises, some interactive games, and a special presentation by a BronxNet guest speaker. Our BronxNet reporter, Jonathan Calixto, has more details.
Conversation, speech exercises, but more importantly, community is what you can find as part of the Bronx Toastmasters Club in Riverdale.
Toastmasters is an international organization. There are groups all over the country and all over the world.
Celebrating 25 years in the Riverdale area of the Bronx, the club welcomes new members, helps others win speech competitions, but more importantly, inspires confidence vocally.
It is a very diverse crowd, and the stories that you hear in this particular group, especially in the icebreakers of how people got here and what they're trying to accomplish, and people who've only been here a few times have actually gone on to win speaking contests.
You learn how to talk, how to prepare your speeches, how to organize a meeting, how to organize your life, how to organize your profession, and how to be a leader.
It allows you to really be confident in your speech and in what you say, and it really allows you to be your best self. And I feel like groups like this are essential.
The club also welcomes guest speakers. For this meeting, it was BronxNet's field production coordinator, Kyrie Moody, sharing his public speaking advice.
I think definitely putting yourself in your public speaking, in your speeches, I think that's the most important part when you guys are public speaking, because you want people to connect with you.
So if you are looking to sharpen up your public speaking skills, Toastmasters is welcoming new members both virtually and in person. Reporting for BronxNet, Jonathan Calixto.
I think I know that guy. All righty, thanks, Jonathan. In community news, the New York City Housing Authority has commenced a green space revitalization project at Castle Hill houses in the Bronx. Now, this initiative is part of the Green Space Connections program aimed at enhancing accessibility and vibrancy in open spaces across public housing developments. Our BronxNet reporter, Chamela, has a story.
It's being labeled as one of the largest public housing developments breaking major ground. A transformative green space project taking place at Castle Hill Houses, a New York City Housing Authority development in the Bronx, where a ceremony is underway marking the beginning of the initiative, part of the Green Space Connections program aiming to create more accessible and vibrant open spaces across public housing developments.
80% of NYCHA's open spaces are not accessible, and projects like this improve community mental and physical health, safety, and sustainability. We're inviting residents now here, once this dog run is open, to bring their dogs out to meet their neighbors, to spend some time outdoors, to go and barbecue behind us, or spend time in the playground area. It's really important that NYCHA residents have that opportunity.
Expected to be completed by spring 2025, the reimagined space will feature a new dog park, updated barbecuing area, improved access to greenery, and maintenance updates to community public spots. The amenities chosen by over 800 residents who voted on the project's design.
Every group of residents wants something else, so here we're building the first dog park at NYCHA, which is really exciting, and that's what Castle Hill residents really wanted. In other developments, we've heard that people would love to have playground upgrades.
The Green Space Connections program, a collaboration between the New York City Housing Authority, the Public Housing Community Fund, and the Design Trust for Public Space, will also activate open spaces at 3 other developments: Marlborough and Roosevelt houses in Brooklyn and Patterson houses in the Bronx. The program's participatory design process ensures that residents are involved in shaping their community's green spaces, part of a broader effort to enhance the quality of life for residents and promote more equitable and sustainable public spaces. Event representatives also encourage the community to learn more through available resources and information online.
You go to our website at communityfund.nyc. We have programs like this and all the other offerings we have for public housing residents.
On Lacombe Avenue, BronxNet Community Television, I'm Chris Chamela.
And thank you, Chris. That is all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We are taking a quick break, but guess what? We'll have more open when we return. And we are back. Saving Walden's World is a film offering an inspiring look at redemption and hope through the journey of a former arms dealer. Now, after recognizing the harm his past work has caused to vulnerable communities, he dedicated decades to make amends and fostering a sustainable future. Now, the documentary sheds light on his transformational quest as well as his commitment to positive change. Joining me now, we've got the director of Saving Walden's World. We got Jim Merkel. And Jim, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Daren.
So you make this awesome transition, and again, glad to have you. You make this awesome transition from being a military subcontractor to now a filmmaker. How does this come about?
Well, I was, a young Republican kid who thought anything that the U.S. does is right. And so come out of engineering school on Long Island, and I'm out there and climbing that corporate ladder, and all of a sudden they have me traveling all over Europe, meeting with arms dealers in hotel rooms. And I got an education that I didn't get in school. And it kind of flipped everything on its head, because all the things that I had thought came to be not so true. And I really saw the pain and suffering happening all around the world in the 80s. So like the US was going after all these regimes who are trying to educate their people, trying to do land reform, trying to get people out of poverty. And why are we the ones trying to stop that? So I basically had a crisis point, and I said, I got to get out of this.
Yeah.
And so that happened back in '89.
And so here you are making this film, and it really focuses on sustainability goals and really trying to reach these sustainability goals. Walk us through a little bit about what, if somebody's not really familiar with the film, what they would find out.
Yeah, well, I tried to film where people are having small families in societies, where they have small ecological impacts, but also they have really healthy people. And I wasn't sure what I'd find. So from data sheets, I take them to these societies you may never go to, who's been to Cuba, who's been to Kerala, India, southern state of India, or Slovenia. And I wasn't sure what I'd find. But what I found there astonished me, because you find these cultures with women at the leading edge of making their society better. Well, why? Well, 60 years ago or more in some of these societies, college became free for everyone. So women, from a poor family can go and decide at 16, well, I could be an engineer, I can be a businesswoman, I could be a medical doctor. And so women have these aspirations at 16, and they're not becoming pregnant as a teen. So you're going to really protect your fertility when you have dreams. And for a lot of women, say here where I live in Maine, if you're part of the poorer 40%, your parents are not going to pay for college. You're not going to have health care. You're not going to have dentistry. You're not going to have childcare. Well, I'm filming in these societies 30 times poorer than us, and yet the people have childcare. The women have maternity leave. They have health care, dentistry, free college. And we keep saying we can't do it. We keep saying we can't help our poor. And these other societies aren't saying that. And so I wanted to, at first I wasn't sure. I thought it may be a basket case over there. But in essence, like if you go to Cuba, their infant mortality rate is lower than ours. Their children are healthier. Yeah. They rank higher in education. They live longer. How is that happening? And we keep putting them on a terrorist list.
Walk me through it. I mean, you spent 8 years out here, 8 years going around filming and finding out new information. When you look at the 8 years of filming, you came to some incredible discoveries. You bring that to light for some of your viewers. But the reality is that there is sustainability out there. We just aren't paying attention to how and who.
Exactly. And, they're unlikely places. Like, America don't want to learn from somebody else. And usually these are people of color. I'm almost filming all people of color in India and Cuba. And these people got great solutions. When I hear about the community of organization in the U.S., the BIPOC community, they're talking about the intersectionality of all these issues. They know that things are interconnected. So they're going to connect climate change to racism, to affordable health care, to living wage. All these things are getting connected. And that's what these other societies did like 50, 60 years ago. They connected the dots, but then they had educated people who could follow through and make good public policy. And so that's what I see starting to happen in the U.S.
You talked a little bit about one of the things I wanted to hit on, which is the intersection of climate change, social justice. From your lens, what did you come upon?
Well, to me, it's the kingpin. You know, we want to laugh about, say, India with the caste system. We got a class system that is every bit as horrible. And the rich and the poor in America is such a divide. And you got to make life better for everybody. That's the only way we're going to get anywhere, is to, you're always looking out for who is not getting served, Like, it's not like make America great. It's like America would be so great if it would help others be great by like making sure they have clean water, making sure they're not invading their country for getting business interest going in those countries. So, everybody's better when we, make sure no one's slipping through the cracks in their community. And that's what I found these other societies. They're making sure that, who is underserved, who's slipping through the cracks. That's who we have to pay attention to. The middle class already has it made. I'm already, say, like middle class. I don't want anything to help me. I don't need no help. Of course, we need help, but we want to help who is the most needing always. And if you put your focus on that as a society, I think everybody does better.
You use your film as advocacy, if you will, and this is an advocacy for sustainability, for a bunch of different things. Talk to us about the fact of making the decision to say, listen, I'm going to take my gifts, my talents, and I'm going to take them, and I'm going to really use this as in the form of advocacy. Yeah,
An advocacy film can be something you don't want to hear because it could feel like propaganda. I didn't want that. But my film is really showing, I think, the honest truth that we often don't see. So when people see my film, they're saying to me afterwards, like, wow, I'd never experienced what it's like for a fishing village in India of women who are like, they're dressed in saris and they're putting the fish in a basket and putting it on their head. And then they're selling it within like 20 minutes at a market. And the market is just full of women who are employed and selling the fish and making the money. And, 30, 40 years ago, that would have been the men making all the money. And so what they're transforming is all these women-led businesses in India, like where I filmed in Kerala, there's 4 million women in a neighborhood groups who are forming small businesses, and they keep the money. And what they spend the money on in these villages is, helping their kids with school supplies, clothing, their needs. And if you give the men in these the money to the men in some of these societies, unfortunately, they'll buy a scooter for themselves or they'll go and buy alcohol. And so what societies are finding, if you empower women and get them economically sound, and they're not under the thumb of their husband, who's going to keep them in the house, they really contribute to society in ways that, it's not that surprising to me in a way, but I think it's surprising to a lot of people and Americans who maybe want to discount. Like, we always want to kick the people below us. And if you stop doing that and you say, these are my friends and people I want to work with, and we can solve problems together in our community, everything starts happening.
I want to talk about the timing of the film. Actually, it's being released as a screening that's coming up right around the corner. It actually coincides with the United Nations and the Summit of the Future that's taking place right there. Talk to me about what you want viewers to be able to take away from this film.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing people where these sustainable development goals, they call them the SDGs, 17 of them. It starts with getting rid of poverty. I want people to realize, like, here in America, I'm not trying to rub your nose in it, but we could do so much better for our people. And that's what my film shows. If Kerala, with 30 times lower GDP, if Cuba, under a 65-year embargo, can have their children have lower mortality rates than us and perform better in education, have doctors graduate with no debt from medical school, why can't we? So what I'm hoping people will take from this is, like, sustainability is happening. Get ready and contribute, because if we contribute together, we're going to really get it to happen. And, I'm calling it Saving Walden's World. That's my son, Walden. He's 14 now. And if you think they have a future, if we don't really get busy. So I don't want to say, hey, those kids are going to figure it out. I think that's too big of a burden for an adult to put on the kids. And I'm like, who's the adult in the room? So if you're an adult in the room, you're watching the world today, you got to get involved.
Yeah.
There's no other way. We got to get involved and have fun making the world better. And our kids are going to see us having fun, making the world better, making the community better, wherever we live. We're in the Bronx. If we're up here in Maine, we're making the world better. And when they see that, they get inspired, you know. But if we're just like playing around while the Titanic is sinking, what are they learning from that?
Yeah. Jim Merkel, I got to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, talking about really cultural competence, consciousness, and you're right on it. And we want to let people know they can go see Saving Walden's World. And thanks for taking the time and giving us a little bit about it. And we look to see you in the future.
Thanks, Daren.
All righty, Jim Merkel. Now, if you want more information about Saving Walden's World, visit the website, savingwaldensworld.org. Encourage you, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open coming up right after this.
19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
And we are back. The ongoing debate over New York's consumer-directed personal assistance program has reached a critical juncture as the state approaches a pivotal deadline. The plan would eliminate the role of over 600 fiscal intermediaries and consolidate services under a single vendor, a move facing strong opposition from industry groups and lawmakers. Here now, sharing more, we've got the New York State Senator of the 33rd District, Gustavo Rivera, and he's here joining us. Good to see you as always.
Pleasure to see you, man.
Listen, so when it comes to this, you and the governor just don't see eye to eye on this, do you?
We do not. So let's back up for a second. What we're talking about here is something that is known as CDPAP, or the Consumer Directed Assistance Program. What that means is that if somebody has a physical ailment or some sort of disability, but still has the capacity to be able to direct their own care, they can choose someone maybe in their family or somebody else, and they can actually direct that person. They say, take me out of bed, help me feed myself, et cetera, et cetera. And we have in the Medicaid program the ability to be able to pay those folks with state money. Now, it is true, and in this we do agree, partly with the governor, that the program currently as it's structured needs to be changed. It needs to be it needs to be modernized, because the problem is that the way that it's currently structured, there are way too many bad actors that are taking advantage of it. Because let's say if I'm taking care of you, right, and I have to get paid, I don't know anything about human resources, payment structures, etc. So a fiscal intermediary, or FI, are the people who actually make sure that the state dollars flow to me that's taking care of, who's taking care of you. And unfortunately, the way that that's done right now needs to be restructured. However, where we do disagree strongly is that what the governor wants to do is change the system so that instead of a bunch of them, we have one fiscal intermediary for the state. I do not believe that that is a reasonable way to do this, and I believe that the bill that I just introduced to restructure the program is much more reasonable than the government.
So let's get into it for a minute. So you have this bill that's coming up in before October here, and what's this? How do you see this playing out?
Well, the bill, the October date that you're talking about is the date to that the state is supposed to pick this fiscal intermediary, this one vendor. We're not in session right now, as you know, but what I want to do with this bill, which I just introduced in the last couple of days, is to start a conversation and hopefully to get the governor to pay attention to the fact that this is a more reasonable way to actually restructure the program. Now, they're saying that we don't, we're way too far down the road. We have an ability, we can't change this right now. I will remind everyone that just a few months ago, the governor at the very last minute changed everything related to congestion pricing. We can have that conversation. I thought that was the wrong way to go, but the notion that she can't actually change this when we are just less than a month away from them choosing an actual fiscal intermediary, I think that's not a serious consideration. Right. This is a more reasonable way to go about it, to change from what are hundreds of fiscal intermediaries, which again, we need to change. Right. But we can't do it just by switching to one. Among other things, fiscal intermediaries need to have cultural competency, geographic competency, linguistic competency. This is the reality. We have a big state. Having one fiscal intermediary is not the way to go.
So what is the impact, per se, on public health here?
The impact of public health, when you have, what this program does is it keeps people out of hospitals, it keeps people out of nursing homes. If you remove the program, then you have potentially people, hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who all of a sudden might not be able to, the program structure might actually leave them behind because the shift from the hundreds of fiscal intermediaries to the one, it might be way too disruptive. There's no clarity about how this is actually going to happen and in such a short period of time, because supposedly it's supposed to happen between October of this year and May of next year. I don't think that that's a realistic timeline. The way that my bill works is it sets a timeline for an additional year to allow for a transition to occur and for a licensing process to happen to weed out the bad actors and to make sure that the good actors can continue to operate. That is a more reasonable way to do it. To do what the way that I've been talking about this is not what the governor is suggesting is not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It's leaving the baby in the bathwater and electrifying the little tyke. We don't want to do that. We have a more reasonable way to do this. This bill would provide licensing, would provide a structure for the controller to be able to do to be able to look into the finances of the fiscal intermediaries to make sure that bad actors are weeded out. There's all sorts of things that are built into the bill so that the bad actors that we want to keep out of this business, we make sure to keep out.
Share with me a little bit about the role of overdose prevention centers and how you see this playing out.
So overdose prevention centers are what that means. There are 2 of them that are operating in the city of New York right now. This is a modality of harm reduction that has occurred across the world for over 30 years. This is what happens. We have an overdose crisis right now. We have people who are dying from the use of opioids. We have people dying in our streets, dying in their homes. What an overdose prevention center would do, and again, there are 2 places that are operating in the city of New York right now that do this, is that someone would come to a place to use drugs under medical supervision. Now, people might be like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Well, the option is what we have right now, which is people using publicly, people using in front of children, people overdosing and dying in the streets. As opposed to that, these 2 centers that have been operational, just 2 of them, in the last 2.5 years that have been operational, almost 1,600 individuals have overdosed in those facilities and not a single one of them has died. Because the overdoses are managed, most of them with, not even with naloxone. In most instances, most of these overdoses are managed with just oxygen and taking care of the person. So it is a way to do this. Now, the thing is, this is something that I believe needs to be done at the state level to be allowed to happen at the state level. It doesn't mean that they'll pop up everywhere, but it means that programs that are already operating, that are harm reduction programs, can actually, as I see it, graduate to this next level of care. And again, this is an option to make sure that people stay alive so that they can seek treatment, so that they can get off of drugs, so that they can stay, if they stay alive, people cannot recover if they're not alive. So instead of continuing down the path of criminalizing people who use drugs, that doesn't solve anything. If arresting people who use drugs actually solved anything, we would have solved overdoses and addiction so far, and that doesn't work.
And what you found out so far, talking about Narcan in the overdose situation, is a lot being used there, or is there?
Narcan or naloxone, right? It's basically a way to when someone is having an overdose to revert that overdose. But what I'm saying is that in these centers, this is actually barely used because it's not necessary. What happens when you're overdosing on an opioid is that your body is not processing oxygen. Right. So what the naloxone does is it actually tells the body to start doing it again, to reconnect the the word, there's a word that I'm blanking on right now, but the point is that it tells your body to start breathing again.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can actually put oxygen on someone without providing naloxone,
Right.
if you put oxygen on someone, you make sure to talk to them. Are you okay? What's going on? You can actually manage this in a lot better way. And again, as I said, most of the overdoses that have occurred there, they're managed without any type of drugs. They're just managed with oxygen, and not a single person has died. And that's the thing that we have to rely. That's the thing that we have to really focus on. The reality is that way too many people, and these are our neighbors, these are our family members, who are dying in the streets, in bathrooms, in restaurants, and underneath staircases, in subway stations, etc. As opposed to that, let's actually get folks who are people who use drugs or people first. Let's treat them as people who use drugs with dignity, and let's actually get them to an opportunity where they can seek treatment. And overdose prevention centers are a way to do that, and I'm seeking support to bring them here to the Bronx.
Okay. I got to be a good journalist now because, normally on the show we do follow the heavy news, but the heavy news of the day, of course, is taking a look back at yesterday and taking a look back at where we were in terms of the presidential debate. Yeah, I knew I'd get it.
Well,
I knew I'd get a rise out of you.
Did you know? It's like, listen, I'm just like what we saw yesterday was, I mean, it's just, it would be funny if it wasn't so damn scary. We have somebody who's seeking the presidency, who, in all honesty, tried to tell us that people are eating their dogs in Ohio, or that transgender illegal aliens are getting transgender operations in prison. It sounds like he was doing a drinking game, and he was trying to get everybody to hit all the bingos in one place. This was a deranged man who has we're talking about Trump, no capacity to actually govern, as opposed to what Kamala was doing last night. She was saying to people, notice what he's doing. He's talking about himself. I am talking about you. And that ultimately is what this election is going to be about. Who has the opportunity, who has the plan, or the series of plans, to actually deal with the issues of the American people? And I believe that Kamala is the person to do that. Do I agree with everything that she's done in her career? No. But does she have the capacity to lead? Yes. Does she understand what it takes to actually make sure that Americans are safe? Yes. Does she actually understand the plight of the normal American? Yes. That is not something you can say for that other deranged man across the way, who, again, was just, if you listen to the questions that were being asked, he was being asked about the economy, he was being asked about abortion, he was being asked about foreign policy, and all he could do was gripe and whine and be weird. Wasn't he just freaking weird? I mean, he was talking about eating dogs. How weird is that?
I have to be objective.
You have to be objective?
Yeah,
well, I think that's an objective fact.
No,
when
really,
you're talking about a story about eating dogs, which was, I mean, it's ridiculous to begin with, but that is just weird that they're lingering on that. Let's talk about dog eating. What are you talking about?
Let me ask you this question on a more serious note here too.
Oh, I'm dead serious.
No, I know you're. I know you're serious. I'm serious too on this one here. Democrats, in order to win, you gotta have more than an anti-Trump message. Did that message get out yesterday?
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying. It's like what she was doing last night, and this is what we have to do every single day as Democrats, and I hope in the next 55 days that everybody knocking on doors, everybody talking to somebody on the phone, and every single elected official who is campaigning on behalf of the president or of themselves, do that, to talk to them, to talk to people about what their issues are, meaning constituents, the people who we're trying to represent. What are we trying to do to change their lives? Last night, Kamala consistently talked about the plans that she had for the American people. She talked about tax breaks for working class families. She talked about foreign policy and how to keep people safe. She talked about energy policy, etc. She talked about what are we going to do for you? What are the plans that we have for you to change your lives and to make them better? He did nothing but talk about himself. So she had to be able to push back on him a little bit, but if you noticed, again, what she did was just try to push, besides the nonsense and the craziness, which there was plenty of, she tried to push that to the side, and she was successful. She pushed that to the side and then spoke directly to the camera, which she rarely did. He was talking about, he was looking at the moderators, whining about why, oh, my crowd size is so huge, it's so huge. And she was like, yeah, no, let's talk about tax policy. Let's talk about working class people, just directly looking at the camera and saying, these are the plans that we have to change the American people's lives. And that's what I think we need to do in the next 55 days, because you're absolutely right. It can't just be an anti-Trump message. It has to be a pro-American people message, and that's what Chamela did last night.
Yeah, we'll take a look and see how it goes. November's around the corner. Got to bring
Indeed.
you back. State Senator.
Looking forward
Good
to
to see
seeing
you
you.
again.
Absolutely, brother.
Gustavo Rivera, State Senator, 33rd Senatorial District. Listen now, if you want more information, follow him on Instagram at NY Senator Rivera. We encourage you to don't go anywhere. We got more open coming up right after this.
Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. "55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. "34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
And we are back. Today is National HIV, AIDS, and Aging Awareness Day, which is a time to reflect on many ways adults with HIV and AIDS are living longer, healthier, and they're having better lives because of medical advancements. Now, the needs of older adults living with HIV or AIDS can be more complicated, and many advocates say the stigma and prejudices around it continue to be a problem. Here now is the LGBTQ plus program coordinator, I almost messed that up, all the words up there, program manager, I should say, at VNS Health, Arthur Fitting. I was doing good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I started putting letters together and then program, I was like, Arthur's here, he's going to talk to us.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, Daren.
Glad to
It's
have you
nice to be
back.
back, and it's always great to come to the Bronx. I
Thank
really
you.
love it, and talking to the Bronx people. And it's just really great to have you talking about this subject. It's so important for people who are aging with HIV.
Right.
And we find that there's been a great, advances made in the beginning. When I started my nursing career, it was in the beginning of the AIDS crisis, and we really didn't know what we were, doing then, because we were working in the dark, and there was so much unknown at that time about AIDS and HIV. And then luckily with VNS Health, we were able to develop different care models to kind of adapt to the situations, to be able to keep people at home longer and in the privacy and really the dignity to get the care that they needed. And of course, there was no medicine at that time. And then we see now the advances that have been made, and a lot of the advances have been made by many dedicated, professionals who've been in the field for a long time, doctors and nurses, therapists, researchers, and community advocates. And many new pharmaceuticals are online now, and it's really extended the lifespan, can extend the lifespan for many people who are living with HIV.
You talk about that, and there's some great progresses that have been made, but I also want to talk about some of the challenges, because one of the challenges is testing, right? And talk to me a little bit about this testing, because the lack of HIV testing for older adults is quite prevalent.
Right. There are many reasons for that. One is still big areas of stigma. People who are older are reluctant to get testing because of just the stigma that's attached to it. Also, in many healthcare settings, the standards for your normal physical is HIV testing is not done after the people are in their 60s. There's a real lack of understanding that people are having sex, after their 60s into their 60s and need that testing done. So it's not even being offered to some people. Also, the testing sites in some locations in the Bronx, like there are less testing sites that people have to really look for them. Also with testing that many of the healthcare providers who are not specialized in HIV are still reluctant to ask about sexual histories. And so that's a very unfamiliar area that patients have in bringing up with their doctors. So that whole area sometimes is not even spoken about.
Speaking about area, talk to me about the Bronx. I know there's some accessibility challenges that we have here in the borough, and particularly here in the Bronx. Talk to us about that.
Well, the Bronx, is one of the largest areas where HIV is now, and that sometimes people don't know where the testing centers are. There's also, a lot of the health education for HIV has been directed towards a younger audience and not towards the older audience. So a lot of the people who are living with HIV for a longer period of time, or people who are older, don't really know where to go for testing. So one thing that people can do is call 311, and that they will give you the name of a testing site near them, near where they live. Also, one of the sexual health clinics that New York City Department of Health has.
Mm-hmm. So Arthur, for yourself, as you look through the years, you can see there's been some positive gains, particularly in the area of awareness and education. But how big still today is stigma? Because you talked about when AIDS first started and HIV, and there was huge stigma and huge misunderstandings and stereotypes. But now we look today, how prevalent are we looking at, stigma and stereotype? Because sometimes it's hard for you to just get that word across if somebody's already got this instantaneous barrier there.
Right, and it's also generational. There's a lot of generational issues that come up, and that with the older population, there's a great deal of social isolation. And part of that's related to the stigma that's attached of HIV. So it's really important that people try to integrate people who do have HIV into the community. One thing at VNS Health that we do is just really provide care in a safe space, so there is no stigma attached. So that people who have HIV, we've been taking care of people since the beginning of the pandemic till now, and we have a great clinical staff that's very well, knowledgeable with all the things that are going on in HIV. And we also have health plans that are specifically looking at how best to take care of people with HIV.
Yeah. So for people who need more information in terms of tapping in, and if they're watching at home right now saying, listen, I want to tap in on the conversation, some resources that are available, what are they doing?
Well, a good thing would be to go to our website, also. And one of the other things that people can do is look at, community-based organizations in their area. So, organizations like SAGE or GMHC really offer a lot of information to people free that they can get. Mm-hmm. We also have a lot of information that we can give to people. A lot of times people don't really know what they want or what they're looking for. And a lot of times with the older population, they really need a safe place to call. Right. And so they can definitely call us.
So walk me through your job as a program manager. What does this entail?
It entails a lot. With the LGBT population, LGBT health is a relatively new field. Mm-hmm. But one of the good things that has really happened is that VNS Health has been a real pioneer in this area. And the VNS leadership people have really supported this community for a long, long time. And so it deals with a lot of community outreach, going into the community, doing healthcare education. We go into the community and we do, health assessments. We also promote, our different programs that we have. I work within the agency. We have many different programs at VNS Health. We have behavioral health. We have our health plans. We have hospice. Those areas that really people are not aware of how that affects the LGBT population, like with hospice and how does that relate, and how are people using those services.
Yeah, a big educational tool, I guess, for a lot of people out there who may not be so familiar. The resources are out there to really connect. As we go forward, What would be your advice for people who are, on the fence about saying, listen, maybe I don't want to really delve in and get the information, but information is critical, to have and to do, so that way you can have a more successful life. What do you say to people who say, listen, you know what, who may be reluctant because of stigma?
Yeah, I think that's really a big barrier. A big barrier for accessing care is the stigma. And what I would say is that there are safe spaces where people can go for care. And VNS Health is a safe space. There are community-based organizations that are safe spaces. And I would really encourage them to access that. If they come onto our website, we have many areas that they can look into, and they definitely can call me as a resource person.
Glad to have you, Arthur. Good to see you again.
Thanks so much. It's glad to be back in the Bronx.
Oh, glad to have you again. All righty. Well, listen, now, if you do want more information, go ahead and visit the website at vnshealth.org. Call them at 800-675-0391. Ask for Arthur. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open coming up right after this. And we are back. In our society, domestic and sexual violence continues to affect countless lives, particularly within underserved communities. For Latinx survivors, the challenge is not only in escaping the cycle of violence, but in finding the support that understands and reflects their unique cultural experiences. Here now to tell us more is the digital outreach specialist of the Community Engagement Program at the Violence Intervention Program, Chamela Martinez. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, as we talk a little bit about this here, it's a very sensitive topic, right? And yet, and still, information we got to get it out there. Supporting those persons who are victims is a part of what you do. But talk to us a little bit about that wraparound service that you provide in the work that helps these people along.
Okay, so I'm part of the Community Engagement Program, and our work is essentially to focus on three things. First, we are the ones that make that connection between our programs and the community. And we have three pillars, and it includes our Promotoras Initiative, our digital outreach, and as well as our community educator. So starting with our community educator is the one that goes into schools or any other events that a workshop is needed in order to educate the community about domestic and sexual violence, as well as any other related gender-based violence issues. Then we have our Promotoras Initiative, which are a very special group of survivors who have gone through our service and are able to go into the community, talk about their own personal experience, and tell the people about what's going on with domestic violence with their own story, and have that one-to-one conversation that makes the person feel more comfortable and also related to what they may be going through, or if they know someone that could be going through that situation. The promotoras are the ones that are that face for us, that are able to represent us in the communities. They go to laundromats, they go to beauty salons, nail salons, anywhere that is public, the streets, they're everywhere. And then we have our digital outreach, which is my role. So I manage everything that is on our website, our social media. The way that we use our platforms is to educate. So what we do is that each month we do different campaigns. We'll take on campaigns about domestic violence. That would be for next month. We'll take on mental health, talk about mental health and how that relates to domestic violence. So, yeah.
So, mental health, how prevalent is that in the work that you do and the people that you see? Are you seeing a lot of people with mental health challenges come across your doorstep?
Yeah, mental health, it's very related to the experiences that we go through. So if you go through a domestic violence or sexual violence situation, your mental health is affected. Right. Anything that you go through, any trauma that you go through, your mental health is affected. And we have counselors in our different programs. We have many different programs specific to what the survivor is going through. So if you're going through sexual violence, there is a program specifically for that. If there is a child and a family, there is a program that's called the Child and Adolescent Program that serves children between 3 to 18 years old. And there is clinical counseling specific for that situation. There's also the Economic Justice Program that focuses on survivors that have gone through challenges economically, and we try to provide that financial independence for them. So
when you talk about domestic violence and you have this awareness that goes on, I wonder in some of your comings and goings, as you're having conversation about domestic violence, are people more prone to thinking that it's just the physical? Because that's what a lot of people really I think center on. How much of an awareness do you have to bring to people that domestic violence is more than just the physical?
Yeah, so that's where our workshops come in, and we bring on that awareness that it's not just physical. Domestic violence is very complex, and there's many layers to it. There can be emotional abuse going on. There can be economic abuse going on. So many different types of abuses that is not just physical. It's beyond the physical. That when we're doing these workshops, people think, oh, the usual is just like if someone slaps you or throws you, that's physical. But there's also the mental abuse going on, the physiological abuse going on that many people just think, oh, they're screaming at me. That is a form of abuse. Right. If someone is manipulating you as well, is a form of abuse. And yeah.
So for support, and somebody out there right now saying, listen, what kind of support can I get? How do I go about reaching that support? What do they do?
So the entryway to our services is through our helpline. So a person would need to call our helpline between Monday to Friday, between 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they'll speak with a helpline counselor that will address the situation that they're going through and figure out what service from our programs will benefit them and connect them with that service.
Yeah. And you talk about the work that you do digitally, right? And that's a great footprint all by itself. Are you finding that more and more people are connecting when you can do it from a digital perspective? Because it's a form of communication, but it may not be verbal right off the bat like we're doing right now, but yet and still tapping in digitally. What are you seeing out there?
So what I like about what we do digitally is that we not just do posts, we also do charlas, which to us are Instagram live conversations about gender-based violence issues. We also have a blog, so if someone wants to write and be part of the blog, that's something that we also have. We recently started a podcast to talk about conversations if client wants to come in and talk anonymously about their story. That's something that we've included recently. So I've seen a lot of people just starting to engage more in those other aspects rather than just the post.
Are there any particular conversations that people really want to have these days?
Yeah, a lot of personal narratives. So a lot of people like to talk about their own experience, and then you find other people that are reading the stories or listening to the stories. They're like, oh, I like that you mentioned this story because I can relate to what this person went through or similarly.
Yeah, so the personal narrative really opens the door for a lot of other people to be connected and do. What's the biggest challenge that you find in doing the work that you're doing right now?
The biggest challenge, I would say, sorry.
No, it's all right. Listen, that's a good thing. If you can say you had a big challenge, that's great. I'll turn it the other way. What's the biggest thing that's working for you?
Our social media.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, our social media, because it's connecting us not just to the survivors, but also to other partners that are doing similar work to bring out the work that we do to other communities. Because we do focus on the Latino community, but we are open to helping other people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and different gender identities.
Right. And you know, being a Latina, having that resource there, having someone that can really, people feel comfortable, they get it. How are you navigating that? Because when you talk about the community coming together and really receiving the services that you have to offer, how are you navigating the fact that that we have a great big borough and a big city where Latinos are there, Latinas are there, and really just trying to connect. So the navigation piece for yourself, how do you look about we're gonna get these people, we're gonna connect, we're gonna let people know we're there. How are you navigating that piece?
So we have our community organizer, who is the one that is in contact with the partner organizations that we have, and also if there are fairs, we are there in person distributing our information. So that's a big piece for us, is being out in the streets and having these conversations at any setting that is available.
Yeah. So for people who want more information, they're doing what?
If they want more information, they can check our website, and they could also check our social media.
And you said personal narratives. I want to go back to that for a quick bit before we wrap up. When you say personal narratives, without being too personal, what are some of the conversations that people really want to just talk about? The fact that abuse exists, or the fact that I'm going through this and I've been going this for a minute, or what are some of the things that you're hearing from that maybe we're not paying attention to?
So there are some conversations going around migration, what it means to be a migrant in this city, this complex city where there's other ethnicities that a lot of Latinos are not aware of, these other ethnicities that exist. And we're also having conversations around grief, and there's so many traumas that are present as you are going through domestic violence, because it's not just domestic violence and sexual violence. There's different traumas that occur while you're an immigrant and you're a Latino and being in the city.
Yeah, you open up the door there to a few things, trauma and grief and stuff that is very real. Thank you so much for being with us, Chamela.
Thank you.
All righty, listen. Now, if you want more information, you have to visit the website, vipmujeres.org. And I want to let you know, you can tap in and find out all that you need to know. A lot of resources and things are available. All you got to do is really just go ahead and tap in. Well, I'll let you know we come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us. Most of all, I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, catch Recablecast, Optimum Channel 67, Verizon Files, Channel 2133, or watch us anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with my girl, Rena Valentine. She'll be back on Friday. And for now, this wraps up this episode. I am Daren Jaime. I'm encouraging you, please make sure that you keep this channel wide open, saying take care, God bless. We'll talk to you soon.